There's more to Loa's plan, Wayne stated. Nim tilted her head quizzically. More? After she stops the revolt? That's right. The thing she's actually after. The throne. Nim appeared more confused than surprised. She knew Wilhelmina was a true patriot, and she could understand why the princess would go to such great lengths using her as bait to save the empire. But becoming empress was a different story. It'll be tough to make that happen. That's why we're in this situation. Listen, Wayne went on. Loa planned to bait Aunt Gadol into attacking Natra. That way she could make Aunt Gadol out to be the bad guys and beat them. Forcing the Marquis to cough up the details of the revolt, they would be back to square one. But consider it from an outsider's point of view. Wouldn't it look like Natra was siding with Loa? Surprise flashed across Ninim's face. They might just be fending off oncoming danger, but it would look like they were joining forces with the Imperial Princess. But even if we were her allies, her bid for the throne won't change. We don't have the power to meddle with their internal affairs. But we'd show the Empire she has backers. Plus, she could display her undaunted resourcefulness in outmaneuvering the princes and saving the Empire. Any of these things on their own wouldn't make much of a splash. Put together, it's a whole different story, don't you agree? She did. Those who hadn't taken any notice of her would start to pay attention. That wasn't hard to imagine, and if Wilhelmina showed the makings of the Empress, there would be some who would abandon the three princes and align themselves with her. But her plan failed. If she wins over Geralt, Aunt Gadol would have no reason to fight. Right. That's why I'm guessing she's going the opposite route. What do you mean? Wayne grinned. And with Geralt's own hand, I'll bring Grinnehay Aunt Gadol to heel. Faish's eyes widened in fear. Your Imperial Highness, what in the world are you? It'll be possible to stop the rebellion with Aunt Gadol as our ally, but let's say I want to include them as a force behind my bid for the throne. Their past involvement in the scheme to revolt wouldn't do me any favors. I need their slate to be wiped clean. And you'll have Geralt attack his own father? Faish trembled. Wilhelmina nodded casually. Here's the setup. Geralt has known about his father's scheme the entire time, and he just so happens to receive an invite from the Imperial Princess beckoning him to visit her in a neighboring nation. There he confides in her about the terrible plot. When this is brought to her attention, the two overpower the traitor together. That's basically it. Faish moaned as multiple thoughts raced through her mind. This was Wilhelmina they were talking about. She could probably pull it off and win over Geralt to have things go according to plan. But there was one problem. Your Highness, our numbers are scant, and their entourage is small. To subjugate Aunt Gadol, it's insufficient. Wilhelmina flashed a brilliant smile. So let's borrow some soldiers from Natra. Which is what she's scheming, and it ain't funny, Wayne screamed. Yeah, it would be a huge pain for the West to boss me around after the fall of the Empire. Let's say I wouldn't mind helping if it meant avoiding the outcome for argument's sake. I still wouldn't sign up to fight for the throne. I've got zero interest in mobilizing my forces. More like we're coming up short on cash. The expenses from the recent war with Martin weighed heavily on them. If this turned into a battle with Aunt Gadol, they'd burn through their treasury until there was nothing left but ash. All right, our plan is to support her scheme to deceive Geralt without letting her corner me into sending soldiers to get Aunt Gadol. Sounds like a tough conversation. Well, it'll work out somehow. You follow up with the vassals. I bet they're confused by Geralt's arrival, especially when I was supposed to be discussing marriage with Loa, and get his entourage drunk enough to reveal any useful information, like about his personality. Understood. I'll take care of it. Wayne nodded and looked up with nonchalance. Which is what Wayne is thinking. But that won't do. I must have his army at all costs. Should we take advantage of Lord Geralt? Yes, I think it's paramount. I establish relations with him, especially if he is to inherit Aunt Gadol, or become my husband. I know Wayne will try to exploit him by any means possible, and I'll catch him off guard. Wilhelmina looked at Faish. I'll take care of this. I'm certain my brother's vassals and my delegation are in a panic right now, and I'd like you to silence them. Leave it to me. Wilhelmina nodded and quietly closed her eyes. Damn, that sneaky chick got me wrapped up in her humongous mess. I thought I had him perfectly cornered, but he managed to evade me, as I'd expect of Wayne. And yet, I'll be the last one laughing. 2 tacticians headed toward the banquet assured of victory. Soon it would become clear which of the 2 was sorely mistaken. Marvelous, Lord Geralt. What an insight. It's to our great loss that you haven't taken center stage at the Empire, Sir Geralt. Come on now. The moon rose high in the night. Among the guests at the banquet, Geralt was living the high life sandwiched between Wayne, the crown prince of Natra, and Wilhelmina, the imperial princess of the Empire. To hear that from a prince and a princess. Stop it, I'm blushing. Right now, they were carrying out phase 1 of their respective strategies. Wayne and Wilhelmina would work together to butter up Geralt and get him all loose. That's all you've got to say? Wayne chuckled in an easygoing way. I'm just voicing the truth. I don't shower others with false flattery and florid speech when they have nothing to show for it. I'm a man of my word and proud of it. Oh, how insincere. Wilhelmina's glare pierced through Wayne, but he ignored it, of course. He's right. This time Wilhelmina flashed a fleeting smile. Though you've become one of the great pillars that uphold the Empire, you carry the blood of the royal family of Ankadal. With your lineage, will always come up short with our words. Who do you think you are? Wayne's eyes darted around, but Wilhelmina paid him no mind. Okay, you got me there. Everything was going according to plan. Geralt was all smiles upon being praised by those of Wayne and Wilhelmina's caliber. And of course, he didn't feel an ounce of distrust. Compare his ego to a container. Right now, their golden words were filling it to the brim, flowing as freely as alcohol. On the other hand, those in attendance assumed complicated expressions. There were Geralt's servants and a few from the imperial delegation, along with the vassals of the kingdom of Natra, who were hosting them. While his servants were pleased to see Geralt in a fine mood, they were confused by the way the 2 extolled him. The imperial delegation was more than a little concerned and oozed discomfort. Though Faish had spoken with them beforehand, she couldn't reveal all of Wilhelmina's schemes, since the envoys were loyal to the imperial princes. She could only say that with Geralt's arrival, it had been decided that princess and prince would receive him together. That made it seem as though he had interrupted official business. Even though the imperial princess had graciously received him in the face of his insolence, they couldn't believe that he'd be this disrespectful to her. They were about to explode in fury. Of course, they couldn't say anything since he was the son of a marquis, and they all thought him to be a terrible blight on the reputation of imperial nobility. The vassals of Natra hadn't been told the truth, either. Wayne figured it would be a big nuisance if they found out Wilhelmina was trying to throw them into war. But they weren't as lost as the imperial delegation. They all trusted Wayne, and their goal was to follow his orders and act as hospitable as possible. Which is why the banquet progressed. Their surroundings began to fill with whispers. What's going on? Or I have no idea. But this was white noise to Geralt, because a pair of masterminds were keeping him busy. This was the obvious outcome, though this dream team was only cooperating to dupe Geralt, and once they reached phase 2 of their plans, all bets were off. Wayne and Wilhelmina started to snap at each other's heels in their fight to take the lead. Our kingdom of Natra is delighted to aid in your meeting. I'm certain your father, Marquis Ankadal, will be pleased to hear the news, Wayne would say. Well, Wilhelmina would respond. Then he'd ask us to hurry home, but this is a fated encounter, Sir Geralt. Wouldn't you want to keep this between us, to enjoy our company alone? She whispered in his ear. To translate this to layman's terms. Tell Grinahé to get him to call off his army, pronto. I can't let you do that. I'll keep stalling until Grinahé loses it. Of course, Geralt didn't catch that at all. With a brain soaked in alcohol and hardly ever been exercised, he took their words literally, and since they both understood this, a war of wits commenced. Princess Wilhelmina, if you're to be married, this would be a serious affair in Ankadal, much less the Empire. I would imagine this news would assure your subjects during their time of need. Isn't it the duty of the royal family to release an official statement as soon as possible? Translation. Just team up with Ankadol and crush the revolt already. But it would pain me to leave Natra without repaying you for your kindness. Would you care to join us in the Empire, Prince Wayne? We would welcome you with open arms as the one who brought us together. Translation. I'll think about it if you announce that Natra is backing us. Thank you, but I must remain to protect this nation in my father's stead. I understand your position as a member of the imperial family, but I cannot abandon my own. Translation. I ain't going nowhere. Figure out how to be Empress yourself. I see. Well, we can't announce it via letter as early as today. I can just picture the surprised look on the faces of my brother and Marquis Grinehay. Translation. You want me to expose your letter? In that case, I'll put in a good word as well. If it's for the future Marquis and his wife, I will gladly be of help. Translation. What? I have no idea what you're talking about. The conversation between the two continued for some time, but it changed course without notice. Your Highness, please forgive my interruption. Nanim quietly handed Wayne documents from behind. These require your confirmation. Wayne scanned the papers. On the surface, they appeared to be your average business reports. It'd be no problem if others laid eyes on these documents. On the pages were a code that only Wayne and Nanim could decipher. Excuse me for a moment. Please enjoy each other's company in the meantime. Wilhelmina took the opportunity to launch her attack on Geralt. Wayne deciphered the pages as he listened to her, reading the reports on Geralt that he'd asked from Nanim. Let's see. I've confirmed that Geralt's return to Ankadol was no coincidence. Holy shit, seriously? Wayne instinctively looked at Nanim for confirmation as he processed this unexpected development. She nodded to indicate that it was no joke. Okay, but what does it mean if it's not an accident? He was befuddled, but continued to read, and Geralt's life story unfolded before his eyes. Geralt Ankadol was born the eldest son of an imperial marquis and grew up lacking nothing. While in his family's territory, he experienced no agony or conflict or frustrations or regret. Like a carriage on a paved road, his life was one smooth journey from point A to point B. But that all changed when he reached the capital. He'd been sheltered by privilege all his life until he became the target of merciless scorn, as Ankadol the traitor. For someone who'd been coddled since the day he was born, this stressed Geralt beyond belief, and as a result he turned to alcohol and love affairs, dripping gold and jewels and surrounding himself with yes-men. He'd gained a notorious reputation as a prodigal son, even in the Empire. And then he had a chance encounter with Wilhelmina at a certain soiree. He'd tried to get her attention many times thereafter. If this was love at first sight, the situation could have been salvaged. But the truth was way different. Geralt had known she was popular and thought he'd be accepted if he could win her affections. He desired Wilhelmina out of a subconscious inferiority complex. But his unwholesome advances would never capture her heart, and she'd continued to coldly evade him. Soon he became furious. How dare she dismiss the eldest son of a marquis, imperial princess or not? Did she think he'd let this nonsense slide? Upon hearing the news of her visit to Natra, Geralt couldn't keep his rage in check, exploding in a fit of anger. On the surface, she was enjoying a trip abroad, but Geralt had heard it was to discuss marriage with their prince. He whipped every one of his servants bloody and cursed Wilhelmina to the extent that he would have been arrested for insulting the imperial family had he not been the son of a marquis. And then he had returned to Ankadol from the imperial capital. Why? To attack Wilhelmina's entourage on their way home from Natra. Blah! Wayne spurted internally as soon as he read this. Is this for real? He immediately turned to Nanim, who calmly nodded. Her cheek twitched slightly, which must have been because she hadn't expected Geralt would take things to the extreme. Even Wayne never expected the son of a marquis to plan an attack on the imperial princess over a petty personal resentment. Based on what he read, it made complete sense for Geralt to act this way. He believed Wilhelmina had betrayed him, and he wouldn't be at ease until he made her understand by his own hand. Until justice was served. But that had changed with the letter in question. After Geralt had read it, he bawled his eyes out without care of being seen by others. Oh, I knew I could trust her. She finally understood my feelings. The fact that he'd once cursed her was wiped from his mind. Taking its place was the image of his wife Lowelmina by his side as he was blessed by the citizens of the Empire, which is why he told his father he was going to Natra and rushed off to collect her. I see. Wayne gave a small sigh as he finished reading the documents. He's seriously bonkers. He recoiled in disgust. He'd thought Geralt was a bit odd, but this was something else. If there'd been anyone else Wayne could have used otherwise, he would have done so without question. What a cruel trick of fate, to think that he had to work out a way to tie the knot between this guy and his friend Lowelmina. Well, whatever. Without a second of hesitation, Wayne found his solution. My needs come first. Plus, Loa put half of this on herself. She brought this on herself. If the person in question could hear his thoughts, her face would twitch, no doubt. Wayne stared at Lowelmina as if to provoke her. Besides, if you can't even control this guy, you can kiss your dreams of becoming Empress goodbye, Loa. She must have felt his gaze because she cracked a small smile. Unlike Wayne, Lowelmina had no pawns to investigate Geralt for her. She must have grasped his temperament from their time in the Imperial capital. She knew she couldn't deal with him using normal methods, and even then, she knew she could get him to do as she wished. She'd show them all. Her smile was one of confidence and pride. But that was when the subject of their war of wills spoke up, upon noticing Wayne and Lowelmina communicating with each other in silence. Oh yeah, the two of you sent me that letter. Are you two old acquaintances? Geralt asked, a dark jealousy brewing in his voice. The duo picked up on this. In fact, they'd expected him to harbor resentment, meaning they weren't fazed in the least. Yeah, from when I was studying abroad in the Empire. But wow, what a shame. If I'd known you at the time, Lord Geralt, I would have struck up a friendship with you. Wayne weaved the truth with lies. Geralt gave a small nod. Huh. I spent a long time in the capital, but I haven't heard any rumors of you, Prince Wayne. How did you spend your days there? If he'd been stupid honest and said that he'd faked his identity to attend the military academy and rank top of his class, Geralt would have twisted his face past its limits. Wayne spoke in half-truths. I wanted to immerse myself in the arts, but there was so much for me to learn in the Empire. I spent much of my time in a mansion there. The only form of entertainment I had came from swinging my sword. If that were true, it wouldn't be unnatural for Geralt not to have heard of him. But in an unexpected turn of events, Geralt latched onto something. Huh, you're good with a sword. Well, I've a modicum of familiarity. Wayne felt that this might take a turn for the worse, but had no time to stop Geralt from pressing on. What a coincidence. I'm quite confident in my swordsmanship. You've got to be kidding. It only took a moment for Wayne and Lowelmina to come to the same conclusion. Well, everyone in the room would have the same realization. Based on his body, muscle mass, footwork, and everything else, he had to be far from a swordsman. Then why would he fib? He's pissed about me and Loa being buddy-buddy. He's probably plotting to beat me in a sword fight and put me in my place, Wayne guessed. If that was the goal, anyone would say he should have picked a different challenge. But Geralt hadn't chosen sword fighting at random. They had no idea that Geralt glowed with satisfaction when he won against his own servants on a regular basis. Well, it was more like he was unaware that his servants struggled on the daily to think of the best ways to be defeated, all to avoid invoking his wrath. In any case, Geralt wasn't lying when he said he was skilled with the sword. At least he didn't think he was. Geez, what do I do? Wayne's eyes latched onto Lowelmina. She responded with her own look of shock. You've no choice but to give him a decent fight. Appease him. I'm sorry. A decent battle? That's the hard part. I'll cheer you on. Woohoo! You can do it. Let's go. Lowelmina was looking rather composed, and she had was just going to spectate. Damn you, Wayne cursed. So, what do you say? Let's demonstrate our swordsmanship before Princess Lowelmina, Geralt proclaimed. His declaration riled the room. Of course it did. Both Geralt and Wayne were important figures. If either of them got hurt, it'd be a humongous problem. Your Highness. Nanim took a step forward from behind him. Wayne held her back with a hand. Not to worry. This will be a good show. The wooden swords, he commanded, shutting his coke and taking one. He stood in the center of the hall. The vassals and servants nearby scurried away to make room. Geralt faced him with a sword of his own. And the rules of the game? Whoever drops their sword first loses. They faced each other as they both adopted a stance. This was when everyone was certain of Wayne's victory. It wasn't because of nepotism. His opponent was unstable on his feet, trembling in place. Compared to that, Wayne's breaths, gaze, and sword were steady, making the difference between their abilities crystal clear. The two fighters were thinking about other things entirely. I'll have the prince act as my foil. Geralt was certain of his own victory. All right, I'm going to wrap this up with minimum damage. Wayne was busy plugging away, thinking about their reputations and what might follow afterward. I need to let Geralt have all the glory if I want the plan to work. But I have a name to live up to, too. I can't let myself lose without a scuffle, which meant his best target was the wooden sword in Geralt's hands. His grip was weak, and it'd be easy to knock away. Wayne would let go of his sword at the same time as Geralt. It'd be a tie. That's why he had established those rules as the condition of victory. If I'm being honest, he's so slosh he can't swing that sword around. I'll bet he'll get pooped. I'll get him out of breath in a few strikes and then make my move. With his plan in stone, things were set into motion. Hi-ya! Geralt hollered as he kicked off the ground, as though he was no longer able to stand the silence, springing toward Wayne. There was nothing deliberate about his swings as he rushed in. It'd be easy to counter, but it wasn't the victory that he needed. The wooden swords clashed, and a dry thud echoed through the hall. Then twice, 3 times in succession. Wayne analyzed Geralt's movements and sword position as he pretended to be pushed back. In time, his opponent's breath became labored and his charge weakened. Just as Wayne had expected, the moment had come. Wayne took a breath, calculated his timing, and now he charged. Geralt tripped up over his legs. What? Was it because he was drunk, or was he pushed down by the force of his opponent? The answer was unclear. Geralt lost his balance as if in perfect synchrony with Wayne's charge. He pitched forward, his head drooped, and oddly enough, it propelled toward the sword that Wayne had swung with the intent of knocking Geralt's weapons from his hand. Hey, now! Wayne screamed internally. At this rate, Geralt's head would become a ghastly work of art that no one would dare to look upon twice. No! Turn! Wayne focused all his strength in his arms, and responding to his muscles and prayers, the wooden sword miraculously shifted its trajectory, skimmed past Geralt's face, and smashed into the sword in his loose fist. A dull sound and a sharp shrill overlapped each other. One thud when Geralt went over, and the other when his sword clattered to the ground. Wayne stood frozen in place after he followed through with his swing. He slowly broke from his stance and dropped his sword. Cheers erupted around him. From an outside perspective, it seemed like the perfect victory for Wayne. Since Geralt's rep was shot from the beginning, even the Imperial delegation was clapping, joining the vassals of Natra who'd been rooting for him from the get-go. Wayne was being showered with applause, and Lolomina was spectating. Both were thinking to themselves, holy crap, I friggin' won. Why the hell would you do that? Their silent screams were in unison. Because he'd been using all his strength to change the trajectory of the sword, he hadn't been able to let go as planned when they clashed against each other, which meant he didn't have the chance to make it a tie. Maybe I can trip them by dropping the sword now. Wayne tried this petty trick, but the public wasn't buying it. All the gears in his head turned as he scrambled to find something else to do. Your Highness, Ninim called out. Wayne whipped around, and there, face full of shame and rage, was Geralt. He'd picked up his fallen sword, attempting to rush Wayne. Oh, crap. In that moment, Wayne panicked over the surprise attack. Well, he might have if he was someone else. Wayne could defend himself with his own sword. Easy. But it'd do more damage to Geralt, who was acting like a coward for hounding Wayne despite his indisputable defeat. It'd be incredibly difficult for Geralt to save face. I could defend, but that won't change the fact that he attacked me. Parrying would do the same. In any case, I've got no choice but to avoid him, and naturally to make it appear as though I'm not dodging. Could he do it? He had no other option. Wayne waited until just before Geralt closed in, calculated the attack with all his heart and soul, and he dodged it, spinning to face him as though they just passed by each other. It's perfect. He could insist that Geralt had just tripped and eaten dirt as he went to pick up his sword. Wayne made eye contact with Geralt directly across from him. Apologies for disclosing this information this late in the game, but it's integral to mention that the banquet was being held on the second floor. And while they were fighting, the two had moved precariously close to the walls. And of course, the walls has windows, as they often do. And Geralt plunged right into one. "Ah," Wayne said. The window pane shattered into pieces in an ear-splitting collision. "Oh," Wilhelmina said in surprise. Geralt didn't just break the window with his momentum. His upper half went right through the frame. "Wait," the duo raised their voices, watching his bottom half slowly rise, and he slid out the window. They heard a weighty thump against the ground. Everyone in the room stood frozen in shock upon witnessing this scene. Nanim was the first one to instantly respond and recover enough to move. She had been hanging on to out in the back and pushed her way through the crowd, gripping onto the window frame and leaping down. Jumping from the second floor was nothing to her. And then in order, Wayne, Wilhelmina, and the servants clambered to the window in a fluster and peered over its edge. "Sir Geralt? Nanim, is he okay?" With everyone watching, Nanim fell to her knees beside Geralt, who was stretched out on the ground, and checked his condition. A few moments passed before she gave a grim look. "Well, I don't know what to say," she said. She looked up at the two and spoke nervously. "I'm terribly sorry, but he has passed on." Wayne and Wilhelmina turned to stare at each other in perfect sync.